but I did want to spend just 5 minutes talking about the Super Bowl because I didn't get to talk about it. And you know I love football. It's probably 65% of my show. So I watched it from a hospital bed. I took notes. Swear to God, I'm that big of a dork. So, as I watched it, so much of what we do, not just me, but you, we watch sports, and then we observe something, and then we have an opinion on what we observed. And as I sat there watching it from a hospital bed, sweating, it's part of the medication, notes, no distraction, I'm fascinated with Tom Brady. And I always have thought he's a great leader, but it's beyond that. There's a lot of great athletes, lots in all sports. There's a handful of great leaders. And then there's this inspirational thing that you can't quite quantify, where it's the you don't want to disappoint somebody. Brady has the rare ability to play poorly in stretches, 3 interceptions second half at Lambeau, and he never loses it. He has an ability to not be the most important person in the game. Super Bowl, it was the defensive front for the Buccaneers, and yet he never loses it. That so much of what Brady does is hard to quantify, is that he has the ability, and I grew up watching a lot of great broadcasters, and I always thought Oprah was the best at this. Not only was Oprah great at what she did as a broadcaster, but she curated other broadcasters through her network, and she actually inspired her audience. She was the first person, Ellen did a good job to take the baton from Oprah, to kind of inspire her audience. Brady did something with the special teams in Tampa that's hard to fathom. You watch football, I watch football. For the last decade or more, Tampa's special teams have been a tire fire. But yet in the playoffs, often on the road, they were really strong. Tampa's offensive line, as Tom joined the team this year, was middle of the road. Nobody thought they were elite, yet they went to Green Bay, Kansas City. They were a dominant unit against the Chiefs' defensive line. Ali Marpet's a guard, went to Hobart, came out 12th best guard, 13th best guard, 12th best guard. After Quentin Nelson, is he the second best guard now? Tristan Wirfs was the highest graded player, right tackle in the Super Bowl. Ryan Jensen, the center. Who's better at that position than him? That offensive line was middle of the pack last year. I'm not blaming Jameis Winston. I'm saying is Derek Jeter was a great leader, but he couldn't take a 265 hitter and have him hit 300 in the playoffs. LeBron's a great leader, but he never could make Kyrie Irving a great defender. Tom Brady made Tampa's offensive line a powerhouse. He took their awful, unreliable special teams and down the stretch made them a strength. So that's beyond leadership to me. That is inspiration, and so few do it. And Brady has the ability to play poorly in stretches, to not be on the field for long stretches, to not be that important in individual games, and yet he is inspiring other players. Scotty Miller, a wide receiver, was on with Nick Wright last week and discussed this very thing.
Right away, we just saw his competitiveness and his work ethic. I always say that it's just a testament to who he is. He's outworking. He's done everything you could possibly do in the sport. Everything you could dream of doing, he's done it. The best to ever do it. And he's still out there at 43 years old. I think he is outworking everybody. But then as far as that fiery side, I mean, we saw that right away, even with us when we weren't running the right routes, just getting on us, but in a positive way too, because he wants to get the best out of you, he wants to get the most out of you.
This was not a talent story. And to prove it, go back to week 13. Nobody would argue what I'm about to say, including the Buccaneers. There was a lot of turbulence until about week 12 or 13. Nobody thought this was a Super Bowl team in week 10, 11, 12. Then they had a bye. From that point, that late season bye, they went 8-0. Dominant offensive line. Better than average special teams. Run game. So in that moment, when they finally, no preseason, they finally got Tom in season for 10 days of practice and inspiration, it totally changed the football team. Of course they weren't good in September, October. They had no preseason. It wasn't until they got a bye at the end of the year or near it, and Tom could teach and mentor. That goes beyond leadership. And so much, you always hear stories about people only use 10% of their brain, with rare exceptions. You hear stories about people can lift a car or lift weight. That's not about leadership. You're being inspired by something. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's the fear of losing a child. Maybe it's the fear of gaining something. Whatever it is. When I sat in that hospital bed and I watched that game, so much of what we all do with football is watch, observe, and comment. And so much of what Brady does is not on television. You can't quantify it. And you're going to see all these teams. There are going to be so many teams. Rams with Matt Stafford. Watch the Bears go pay for Carson Wentz. And the Jags are going to draft Trevor Lawrence. And they think it's going to be this magic elixir. It's going to solve all their issues. And they may be better at quarterback. But the big arm and the mobility and all the hype, I can see all that. What Brady does, I often can't. All right, so I was off for just a week, and Russell Wilson is largely known as kind of boring. He always says the right thing. Russell Wilson is one of those guys. It's always, whatever's best for the team, go Hawks. And then I took a week off, and he turned into Howard Stern. He's like he's Mr. Controversy. So he was going on multiple platforms and talking. And he's on with Dan Patrick last week. I think this is late last week. Here's Russell Wilson and opened up a whole Seattle can of worms.
I think that ultimately, for me personally, I think that I want to be able to be involved, because at the end of the day, it's your legacy. It's your team's legacy. It's the guys you get to go into the huddle with. And at the end of the day, those guys you got to trust.
Are you involved in personnel decisions? Have you been involved in personnel decisions?
Not as much. I don't, I think that,
do you want to be involved, Russ?
Yeah, I think it helps. I think it helps to be involved more. But I think that dialogue should happen more often.
Okay, we've got stories now. Russell Wilson, I can tell you this, isn't happy with Pete Carroll. He likes his teammates. He likes Seattle. It's a Pete Carroll thing. The offense is outdated. Analytic people for several years now have rolled their eyes at the Seahawks offense. That's not my opinion. I've had three different Seattle players tell me they feel like they're running a 1980s offense. Since the death of Paul Allen, Pete Carroll has unquestioned power. In my opinion, it's a lopsided franchise where the coach has too much power over the playbook, has too much power over his quarterback, has too much power over the franchise, and too much power over John Snyder. The offensive line has been suboptimal since they traded away Max Unger, a very talented center, and Russ doesn't believe he is given the respect he deserves. And the bigger issue is, let's say Andy Reid was struggling with Mahomes. Andy Reid could still point to that offense and go, look what I'm doing. When Bill Belichick and Brady had their prickly moments, Belichick's defense was still great. What is happening in Seattle is the offense is outdated, but the defense is no good, and that's Pete's specialty. In the last 5 years, Seattle's defense has gone from 5th to 11th to 16th to 26th to 22nd. And too often, Russell Wilson feels like a life preserver for a franchise that can't stop anybody. And what you're having now, and I will say this, it is a little bit of a Tom Brady effect. Because Brady wins the Super Bowl, you got two things happening. Teams are now saying, all we need is a quarterback. Just give us Carson Wentz and Matt Stafford, and that's happening. But here's the second thing that's happening. Guys like Russell Wilson are saying, the hell. Look at Brady's defense. Look at Brady's weapons. Brady went out and he got Gronk and he got Leonard Fournette. Brady clear and Antonio Brown. So you got two things working here with Russell Wilson, who's a top 5 quarterback. You got teams looking at what Brady did, and they want to upgrade at quarterback. That'll solve all our issues. San Francisco's like 26-6 with Garoppolo. Get rid of that bum. We'll never lose another game. Be careful about that. Similarly, I do think you have Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and others, maybe Deshaun Watson, looking at the New England situation saying, Tommy's getting a little say in personnel, and look at Tommy's weapons, and look at Tommy's defense. And he got Fournette, and he got Gronk, and he got AB. It's the Brady effect. And I think a little bit of that is happening with Russell Wilson, who feels like, listen, man, I don't get any say on personnel. I don't get any say in the playbook. I don't get any say on anything. Did you guys just see what happened in Tampa? I think a lot of this, I think the timing is interesting. It happens after Brady wins a Super Bowl. And Russ is saying, time out. You got Deshaun Watson. I think I'm better than Deshaun. He's forcing the team's hand. You got Tommy got personnel say. I got no personnel say. So I think the timing here is very interesting. I think Russell Wilson needs to be authentic. He's falling into a little trap of being Andrew Luck. And I'm glad he came out on Dan's show and other shows and had strong opinions. You got to be authentic about this stuff. If you're unhappy, say it. But here's the situation in Seattle to me. I think Pete's got too much power. Pete doesn't want to relinquish it. And Russell Wilson has earned the right to say more than go Hawks. He is no longer this plucky, small, unique third-round pick. He's a top 5 quarterback in this league, running an outdated offense, who has virtually no say. And I'm not saying they've got to be Tampa Bay with Tommy, but he deserves more than he's getting. I think this relationship has gotten more strained as Russell has gotten higher paid and has more power, and that is making some people like Pete Carroll less comfortable. I don't think this is a great relationship. I don't think Russell Wilson's going to get traded. I've been told he's not going to get traded, but it's fluid. It's imperfect. It's turbulent. It's not great. But I'll go back to this, and I really believe it. Why now? Why Russell talking now? It's the Brady effect. Tom went. Tom had power. Tom played GM. Tom almost coached. And Russell saying, I want a little bit of that. I'm not saying I got to have all of that, but I want a little bit of what Tom's getting because I think I'm in his class. And I don't think he's wrong.